All right, what's going on, everybody? So, a few weeks ago, I did a video on my channel, Wrestling Uncovered. Thank you all for watching. About the Ring Boy scandal, and one Lee Cole, the brother of Tom Cole, who was at the center of that whole debacle. He watched my video and commented on it, and was like, "Good job," and you missed some things. And I was just like, "Hey, why not? I'll see if I can interview him." And here he is, Mr. Lee Cole. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. It's a
Thank you
beautiful
for having
day.
me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. It really means a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, your show's going to grow, and you could just feel it when you look at certain shows. You do your show really well.
Thank you. And I see you have a baseball is life sign in the back.
That's it. I love baseball.
Oh, me too. I'm a true diehard baseball fan. I'm a Mets fan. I assume you're a Yankees fan.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm a Yankee fan.
Yeah, it's been rough. I get people ask me all the time, like, why are you a Mets fan? And it's really like, sometimes I ask myself that. I thought a lot of things were going to change with the new ownership, and it's
Well,
just been more of the
they
same.
got that pitch. Only the Mets can have a pitching staff like that and not do well
Yeah,
that they had a year ago.
I know.
You got Hall of Famers like that, and you don't do well.
I know. Hall of Famers all across the board.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. So, I want to talk to you just overall about that whole Ring Boy scandal and kind of want to get started with. Now, I assume you weren't particularly involved when your brother was. It was mostly Tom that was
Right.
involved, like
I didn't
setting
get
up the
involved
ring.
until Tom came to stay with me. And then he explained to me what happened, and I went out and we got a lawyer,
Uh-huh.
and then we did a lot of research, and within 1 week it exploded.
Wow. So, how did Tom originally get involved with the WWE at that time?
Well, Mel Phillips used to come to. He used to go look for kids from broken families, and he found them. Well, Tom was 14 at that time, and he was a street kid. He spent very little time at home, and those were the type of kids that Mel Phillips preyed off of.
Yeah, it's
because because he played the father figure. He gained her trust.
so. Did you ever get to meet Mel, or
No,
so what did you hear about him? Like, what was like overall, like, there's very little
he
information about him on the internet. So, like, what kind of
well,
guy was he?
in the beginning he turns out to be a nice guy. Then he gets really weird. He starts playing with the kids' feet, wrestling them. He'll be in a motel room in just his underwear with 13, 14-year-old kids. Yeah, I mean, this is a grown man pushing 40 years old, and it started. It's see, he had this thing where he liked to play with their feet, but then it started getting worse and worse. Like, he'd build it up over a period of time. He would never go start doing it right away.
I see. Okay. Now, you mentioned that you didn't get involved until your brother told you, and then you guys pursued legal action. So, when was that? When was your involvement? Like, how
That would
far
be
along was that removed from the
that would
situation?
be in probably December of '91. That's when I started talking to Phil Munchnick, and he was the reporter that did that article, "Sex Lies in the WWF," and that came out in the back of the Post. Huge article back then. But that's when it started, and then we got a lawyer, and uh, that's basically how it started.
Okay. So now Phil Mushnick, what was it like with him? Because I know that he's kind of like, he has this reputation of like, oh, this big WWE hater, for lack of a better phrase.
He's
Like,
not a W. No, he's not a WWE hater. He used to call them out on the things they were doing. He called them out on. Okay, so here's what he noticed. He noticed wrestlers were dying. They were going to motel rooms and dying in their sleep. Steroids were rampant. They were doing whenever they did a show, it would be sexploitation. They'd be very racist. Uh, that's what he always wrote about. It was a very corrupt industry. Actually, what Phil Munchnick said 35 years ago is what's happening now. He called it 35 years ago. He said 35 years ago how evil it was. And everything that he said is coming to fruition now. And now people are like, wow, this guy, Vince McMahon, is one evil guy. And yes, he's a very evil man.
yeah, No, it's been just evident now more than ever, and it's really taken on a life of its own. These allegations. It's like it started in 2022, and it comes out. It's like, oh, okay, he paid off some people, and then now the most recent stories that hit last month, right before the Royal Rumble. It just what did you think when you saw the last set of like news?
I read those texts, and let me tell you, people say, okay, he wrote those texts, but we don't know what she wrote back. That's not the issue. The
Right.
issue is, why is a man that runs a corporation writing the most brutally horrible? I mean, I've read. You could read some. I've never read. Have you read the text?
I heard them. I didn't read them. I heard them explained to me
I had
in being
never read
paraphrased.
books that bad. They had, talking about her taking on three black guys at one time, racist remarks and sexual positions. I mean, I never anything that you could think is wrong with texts. Those texts. I mean, to think that a man would write a text like that, even if you were being dirty with that woman, why would you write something so demented and twisted like that?
Oh my god. So ultimately,
I think you should read the text and you'll understand what I'm saying.
oh, I will. I'm gonna go back
You have
after we
to read.
talk. Yeah. So ultimately, to get back to the Ring Boy scandal itself, what was your what was your overall involvement? I know you said you sued, and so like did you like get to meet Vince McMahon?
Well, here's what happened. Okay. At that time, I was wanted by the law,
Right.
and I had a felony warrant out for my arrest. So I was in hiding, basically, but my brother came to stay with me. So I said, okay, I'm going to go get him a lawyer, and I'm going to stay out of this because I didn't want to be detected. And the next thing I know, I started getting into it more and more and helping my brother. And by that time, Geraldo Rivera sent one of his reporters up. Brooke Skulski was her name. She called and she said, I want to talk to you and your brother. This is when it first came out. I said, no. I said, our lawyer said we can't talk to nobody right now. And then she said, well, I'm going to park my van on your front lawn until you do come out and talk. When she said that, I'm like, all I'm thinking to myself at that time is I'm wanted by the law. The last thing I need is a van parked on my front lawn, and a reporter show up like that. So we agreed to meet, and it just escalated from that point on.
Okay. So at this time, your brother is how old?
21.
So he's 21, and you have this like you're wanted essentially. You're like a criminal at this point, and they want to put you away. What were
Well,
you?
United States Marshals were looking for me.
The Marshals looking for you. So what were you thinking? Like, were you like, I don't even know if I want to get involved in this. Like, I don't need this kind of attention right now because you guys are on the news.
Yes. Yeah. I'll tell you what. At that time when I was wanted, I came home one time and found a burglar robbing my house. I let him run out the back, and couldn't call the police. I couldn't do nothing because he didn't have nothing in mind. I came in just in time. But when you're wanted by the United States Marshal, you have a different outlook on things. And when I say wanted, my crimes were monetary. It wasn't anything demented or twisted. It was always monetary.
Wow. And at so now you had said on my video, you were like, you missed some things. And when you and I talked on the phone earlier, you were like, oh, there's just some stuff that's not on the internet. So can you kind of fill the listeners in on some of the stuff? Because there's very limited information about this. So
not really, because all I remember is I listened to your stuff, and you did a good job. You just left things out. I wasn't saying that as an insult.
Of course.
There's the only way you would have known that is if you really were up on the case.
Right, exactly.
For someone that wasn't up on the case, you did a very good job.
I appreciate that. And what was there anything that we wouldn't know that that's not on the internet? Anything that you can give me any insight?
Well, there was a whole slew of ring boys. I mean, there was a cover up by Vince McMahon and his Stephen Davis, who ran Fairfax, which is what do we say, a private law firm, private law firm basically, but they have their private investigators.
So Vince knew about it. Vince
Oh,
knew about
Vince. Oh,
everything was
yeah,
going
yeah.
on.
But when Tom came out, Vince was worried because they just signed a contract, a toy contract, and they knew that if this got out, he was done. And there was so much. The night before we met Vince Vince came in on a Sunday into um, Manhattan on a Sunday morning to Avenues of America, where it's dead on a Sunday morning. And they kept me out of the meeting, and I should have known better because when they kept me out of the first meeting is when they kind of turned the scenario around and offered Tom back his job with back pay. If I was there, I would have said to Vince, no, absolutely not.
So was it kind of like a bait and switch thing? They offered him the job, and then he took the deal, and then they were just like, no, never mind.
No, well, here's what happened. The lawyer got up and told him how much he wanted. Vince got up and says, well, I'm like a rat. If you back me in a corner, I'm going to fight you really hard on it. And Vince was getting up to walk out. That was a ploy. Basically, there's even a big story behind that. And a lot of this stuff I can't get into because I'm not allowed to, because this information I've given to Major Network. And just so you do know. So I'm trying to give you what I can give you.
Gotcha. Okay, so as far as the insights of those meetings and not really too much you could say there. I got you.
Yeah, but just so you do know, he went out. So as Vince was going out, my brother said, "No, Vince, all I want to do," he goes, "I just wanted to work for you guys, and and you guys chased me away when I was 16. Terry Garvin did this to me." So Vince said, "Okay, I won't hire them back." So all three of them were he let all three of them go at that time: Mel Phillips, Terry Garvin, and Pat Patterson. And so they were out of the company, and Tom felt comfortable at that time. They gave him $55,000 back pay, and then they started cleaning up the mess.
So now you had mentioned Mike Kiyota in the video that you did today. All right, can you talk about any of that stuff? Can you tell a little bit
Yeah,
more
Mike
about?
Chioda was part of the. He actually worked for the ring team, the ring crew. He actually got paid. He was part of the company, and but he knew everything that was going on because we tried to depose him, but we had no luck, of course, because we couldn't get a hold of him. Of course, they're not going to let us.
Of course.
And there were people we were trying to depose because they knew about all the ring boys and all the kids that were there. You know,
Right.
Mel Phillips walked around with a group of kids all the time with him, 13, 14-year-old kids.
And now you had mentioned that Tom, he just wanted his job back. So
Yes.
what was life like for him after the whole scandal and ultimately not getting what he wanted, which was that dream job of being in WWE?
Well, actually, they did bring him back, and they made him promises. Tom wanted the opportunity to become a ring announcer. They said yes. He wanted to come back and work for the company. They said yes. But as soon as he got back to the company, they started bringing him into the office all the time and asking him to sign forms. And one of the forms, there were two forms. That one form was that he agreed to let Pat Patterson come back to work. Otherwise, Pat Patterson would not have been allowed to come back. And he signed that without a lawyer being around. Uh, you got to remember, this is a street kid that was around very powerful people, and we were out of his league. Well, I wasn't so much, but Tom was out of their league when it came to because Miss Linda McMahon would play that motherly figure. You know, oh Tom, I feel bad for you, and she just took him under the wing, her wing, and pretended she was something she wasn't. Nice.
Wow. So so it was hard. It was hard for Tom, I imagine. And then so he actually signed a form that allowed Pat Patterson to come back to WWE. So he was
Yeah,
gone.
because Vince McMahon said we really need him. And Tom said, "Well, I'll let him come back because you got to remember Pat Patterson never really he wasn't like Garvin or Phillips. Pat Patterson was a pervert basically. He went after the wrestlers and would make them sleep with them. Oh, hard. He never tried to sleep with Tom, and that was Terry Garvin. Uh, Tom felt like he had to sign that to get Pat. He just felt better bringing Pat Patterson back because they were putting so much pressure on him. But see that when they put this pressure on him, he didn't have a lawyer representing them. They didn't even call his lawyer and say, "Look, we want him to sign forms." They put him in a room with powerful lawyers. So they could lawyers can make you do whatever they want if you start believing them. And That's what he did. And then there was another form they wanted him to sign saying that myself and Phil Munchnick plotted together to bring down the WWE, the WWF at that time. I talked to Phil Munchnick on the phone and stuff, but I never met the man. It was the most ridiculous thing but Vince McMahon did that on purpose because he brought a lawsuit against the New York Post and Phil Munchnick. And then this way he was able to get the judge to put an injunction where he couldn't talk. But they never did that to me. They never sued me because they didn't know what information I had. And it's a good thing they didn't sue me.
Wow.
It wouldn't have been pretty for them.
Right. Yeah, the narrative that I've seen in like shoot interviews, I've watched other wrestlers or personalities talk about this, and the narrative out there was just like, oh, Vince pretty much manipulated a younger guy and Tom and
Linda McMahon and
Linda.
Jerry McDivitt. Linda McMahon and Jerry McDivitt did most of the manipulating. Vince handed them off. It's just like Vince did with Janelle Grant. Vince went to his daughter and said, take care of Janelle, make sure she gets everything. People don't realize that. That's what Vince does. He hands things off and he walks away from the issue. And with Tom, they handed them off to Jerry McDivitt and to Linda.
That's just unbelievable. He's got his right hand. He's got his right hands working. So there was a book that was written about this whole time frame called Ringmaster Vince McMahon and the Unmaking of America. Are you familiar with this book? Have you read it?
I'm in it.
Oh, you're in it. Okay.
Chapter 11 with my brother. That's me and my brother are in all of chapter 11.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, I had read just like the excerpt that was on Rolling Stone, so I didn't know exactly.
Horrible job Rolling Stone did. The problem with the book is this. The book had the great opportunity to do well, but then it became a political mess. It was based on I hate Donald Trump, and it was based on a guy transitioning in life, which that's his business. But it took away from the book. It took away from the wrestling part. It was more of a political / wrestling book. I think it started off wrestling and it slowly became a political statement book. And that, to me, affected the book greatly.
So overall,
when Rolling Stone did that article, it was horrible. It wasn't even, it was so misinformed. It was poorly written. Rolling Stone did an awful job on that story.
Really? Yeah, I'm glad to hear that come from you because I had read the reviews on the book. I was thinking about getting it and reading it, but the reviews were kind of iffy. So I was like, I don't know. I'll probably sit this one out.
I read chapter 11. I couldn't read the rest of the book. Wrestling fans don't want to read about politics.
Right.
They want to read about wrestling.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter whether you're from the left or from the right. They don't want to read about your politics. They don't want to read about transitioning. They don't want to read about any of that stuff. Put that in a book that it should be in. It shouldn't be in a wrestling book. And that's what affected the book more than anything.
Absolutely. So overall, you would say that book didn't really do a great job of telling the story or honoring your brother or anything like that.
Yeah, because first of all, it's not always the author's fault. When you write a book, you go to the lawyers, and the lawyers decide what you could be put in the book. And by the time they get, a lot of times they report. There was another guy that did another major story, and I worked with him for 2 years on it. And everything we talked about was pretty much left out of the story because the guy wanted to put other stuff in it. It's like, it's not important that children were being molested by this corporation. It's more important that I hate Donald Trump or something like that. I mean, and that's what it comes down to. It's like, it was unbelievable. It's always been like that. It's always been the reporting on this story has not been good until Janelle Grant. Matter of fact, whether you believe Janelle Grant or not, she's the one that really started this. Well, Vince started it by not paying the woman her money. But once she opened that door for me to come. She opened the door for me to leave the mob genre, which I'm doing very well, and come over here. And my channel's doing really well. And now people want to hear this stuff. 32 years later, they want to hear it.
Is it almost, does it give you like a validation just knowing that like your story had a lot of truth and traction?
It gives me a validation. It gives Phil Munchnick a value, especially Phil Munchnick. because people used to say, "Oh, he has this hard on for the." No, he doesn't. He didn't have a hard on for the WWF. He knew it was an evil corporation that destroyed lives. You had people. Listen, if you're a corporation and you have one guy running around with little kids, then you have another worker that's when they turn 16, he's trying to sleep with them,
Mhm.
and then you have Patterson that runs the company and he runs it with leaving keys at in motels and telling people if they come to his room they can go further in the company. I mean, that was Pat Patterson, and then you have all this demented stuff going on with Vince McMahon and women
No.
forcing himself. You have wrestlers dying in motel rooms. You have wrestlers on drugs because they're wrestling 300 days a year, and their bodies are all broken down. Uh, they're not even these wrestlers are not even they're private contractors. And Vince did this on purpose so he didn't have to pay him as much money. He didn't have to cover their insurance, you know. And then when Vince decided that when Vince, remember when he got real big with the steroids and
Yeah.
everything, the thing in the everybody had to do steroids at that time if you wanted to stay. Everybody was blowing up. They were getting huge, unnaturally big. And what happened? Guys like Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, steroids sent them on, killed them because of they were doing. Do you know that Benoit had 10, probably wouldn't have lived 10 more months. His body was so, the steroids wrecked his body so bad. And this is one thing people don't talk about. That he had 10 months to live, they said. 10 months. He was a dying man because of steroids.
I
20,
had never heard that.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yeah, what happened with Benoit is the just the worst tragedy in the history of any pro
But
wrestling,
there were a
any
lot of suspicion.
organization.
But see, that's another thing. You got murders happening on Vince's watch. You got Jimmy Snuka and Nancy Argentina.
I know.
You know, we can go on and on and on. This is a billion-dollar corporation where if this happened to any other corporation, say any other corporation had all these dead bodies, say, they had all this stuff going on, there'd be investigations.
Oh,
But
if it
Vince
was like
McMahon,
Disney, this would be shot down. Like Disney would be taken down more than likely.
well, the problem with what Vince McMahon did, what Vince McMahon did smart is he decided to make his company entertainment. And once he made it entertainment, he wasn't under no state laws for steroid tests or nothing like that. It became entertainment, and that's why he did it.
Right.
And the minute he called they went entertainment, they started getting all those drugs. They always had drugs there, but let's face it, look at these guys. Look at Rock, the way he came in and what he wound up looking like, Hulk Hogan, Benoit, all these guys.
Right.
And they became monsters. And how many of them died?
That's the thing. There's so many wrestlers that have died. It is it's good that you brought up steroids. That leads me to the other question that I have. Now, the WWE, they had the WWF, I should say, at the time. They had the scandal that you were involved with your brother, and then like I don't know what it was, like 10 months later, 12 months later, the steroids trial takes place in 1993.
Yeah.
How do you think, from your point of view, how do you think Vince McMahon was able to escape not one but both of those bullets at that time?
Vince McMahon he did not fear the steroid trial.
Right.
He feared the trial with the kids.
Right.
Because that would destroy him. The
Yes.
steroids is not going to destroy him. And he could defend the steroids. You can't defend children. Once his biggest fear is what other children are going to come out of the woodwork, because he was hunting down ring boys and paying off the families and stuff. They literally went and found ring boys and paid off the families. But so the FBI, the Fed, not the FBI, the New York State, they had a video they came across of Mel playing and playing with a kid's feet, putting it between his legs. You heard about that, right?
Yep.
The video?
That I did.
So FBI actually had this video. And the first two reports by the FBI is they labeled Mel Phillips a pedophile. They labeled him. By the third report, they changed it. They said, well, we don't have enough here. I guess putting a young 13-year-old boy's foot on your crotch and you're a grown man, that's not enough. There was so much. My brother testified in that in front of a grand jury on the Ring Boy stuff, and so and he also testified. He had no choice. He had to testify because he had subpoenas to go to before the grand jury.
So they have this. The FBI has possession of this video of Mel Phillips doing that with little boys' feet, and they label him a pedophile. And then all of a sudden, they're like, "Wait, no, we don't have enough evidence."
By the third report, New York started. They decided they're going after the steroids instead of the.
How did that happen? Now, in the article
no
that
one
I
knows.
read,
That's the biggest question in the world. Why did they drop this first case when they had that evidence? Nobody knew about that tape until Bill Bixen's band did a Freedom of Information Act, and he finally got that. He got an FBI report that admitted that they had that tape.
yeah, there was a great article that I read when I put together my video, and I credited in my video. Essentially, what I saw was that somebody within the WWE was like giving autographs and letting someone in the feds take pictures with the wrestlers. And that's all it took to influence them. That's kind of like that's unreal.
Well, the person that had the tape too, they also were giving him tickets with his son to come and take. Yeah, it was very. That's what the WWF does. I mean, they wrap you around their finger. You got to remember, Vince McMahon is the ultimate con man. He is the con guy. I mean, he comes off as a very striking figure. You know, when I met him for the first time at Rockville Center, when he got out of the car, he was with Elizabeth too. Who do you think the people were cheering, him or Elizabeth?
Oof. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Him.
Oh, him.
No,
yeah.
him.
Yeah.
He has a charisma about him that you can't describe.
Right.
You know, Elizabeth's a beautiful woman, but Vince McMahon's like 6'3". At that time, he weighed about 230 of all steroid muscle, and a very handsome man. And he was wearing a red suit. So it's like you can't help but to see that.
Yeah, he has that it.